The nation's airports are sure to be busy this week. The TSA actually says that it expects to screen about 20 million people who plan to travel for Thanksgiving this year. So are the airlines prepared for nearly pre-pandemic passenger loads? For more on this, let's welcome Sarah Nelson. She's international president of the Association of Flight Attendants. Her union represents nearly 50,000 flight attendants at 20 different airlines. And Sarah, it's good to see you this morning. What's the answer? Are you ready?
I think airlines are ready. So airlines have more crew, more staff than they had pre-pandemic if you compare it to the flight hours that they're flying. Now, airlines were staffing based on a lot of overtime hours before the pandemic, and they have had to recognize that people are just not willing to pick up as many flights because of the conditions in the air, because of the conditions during the pandemic. And they've made adjustments, and they've also negotiated with us where they didn't already have incentives for working over the holidays. They've negotiated to put those in place. They've also pulled back some of the flights that they were planning to run in order to meet the demand. And so I think that we're going to see a good holiday season, barring any major weather events.
Sarah, let's talk through a couple of those issues. You said flight attendants are less willing to pick up some of the overtime that they were before because of conditions in the air. Is that because of all the air rage out there?
That's exactly right. So their families are saying, we don't necessarily want you putting on that uniform that has become a target and going back in. And they've really been chipped away when they go to work with all of the constant conflict on board. And I want to be really clear, Becky, once again, this is a small group of people who are persistently creating a problem in the air. But it has been pervasive, and it has been a regular experience of crew, and they're worn out. And so they're not as willing to pick up those extra hours as they were before.
Do you feel like the airlines are doing enough? Do you feel like the government's doing enough to help and assist?
Well, finally, DOJ is starting to prosecute, and FAA gave them their most egregious cases. We know that when people are getting convicted and going to jail, that is going to serve as a major deterrent. We are also working really hard to try to identify these issues on the ground, working with the air marshals and FBI and local law enforcement and the airports to try to get those problems off of the planes. Our flight attendants tell us that 50% of the issues were identified during the boarding process or at the gate. So if we can keep those issues on the ground, we're going to make a major dent in this. Everybody's working really hard to try to do that. And are we doing enough? The short answer, Becky, the flight attendants would say, no, make it stop. But we are continuing to work very closely with the government and with all of our airlines. And there is progress every single day. The biggest issue that we have is the pushing of alcohol in the airports. So the concessions are trying to make money off of that alcohol and advertising to-go alcohol. That is a huge problem because alcohol is the biggest contributor here. Yes. Well, they're not supposed to. Federal regulations say no, but they're sending the wrong messages to passengers.
Yeah, clearly. So, Sarah, when you started out, you said that hiring, staffing at least, is about at pre-pandemic levels if you consider the hours of flight time or whatever's there. Because I was going to start with that. I mean, some of the high-profile issues we've seen recently where Southwest or American or others had so many cancellations, in some cases thousands of cancellations over the course of a weekend. They said it was because they couldn't get people to those flights. And there have been a lot of things blamed, bad weather and different things. But I don't remember as many instances like this pre-pandemic. What happened? What's different? Are the airlines not staffed enough? Because that was my expectation that, I thought we were using taxpayer money to keep people on the payroll so we wouldn't run into problems like this.
Becky, if we had not had the payroll support program, we'd be in a world of hurt. We would not be able to meet this demand at all. The fact of the matter is that comparatively, I know this for sure at American, that there are more flight attendants per flight hour than there were pre-pandemic. And they have hired some flight attendants. We've had some classes graduate. We had all of the flight attendants come back who were sent home in March of 2020, and they just graduated and are now out on the line. So we do have more staff than we had before, but it's an issue of how the airlines were forecasting. And previously, they were counting on people picking up those trips and those overtime hours, and that is just not happening today. Now, what American did and some of the others have done, and some have been baked into the contracts for many years, is they put in place this incentive pay. And over the holidays, people can make as much as 300% pay. So those incentives are a really good thing to have in place right now because people need a little extra reason to pick up those extra hours and come to work. And so I think we're in good shape.